Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. My name is Harshmeet Singh and this is episode number 2 of the Prelims 2022 Hack series, in which we are discussing with you certain mnemonics, mind maps and memory tricks to remember the important stuff for the Prelims 2022 examination. In episode number 1, we had discussed about the important international groupings and their member countries and how to remember those. In this episode today, we will be discussing about the important water bodies around the world and the nations that surround those water bodies. These kind of questions in the past 5 or 6 years have become very frequent in the prelims examinations. We have been seeing questions such as which of these nations surround the Black Sea, which of these nations surround the Mediterranean Sea or the Red Sea, etc. That is why we will be discussing these water bodies and the nation that surround them, and we'll try and give you the best possible method to remember as many of those as possible. We'll start with the easier ones. Many of these you would already be familiar with. For example, the best way or the easiest way to remember the Great Lakes of America. There are 5 lakes or a set of 5 lakes which are together called the Great Lakes of America. The easiest way to remember these are HOMES, H-O-M-E-S. It's a very common question which can be asked in the physical geography part. H-O-M-E-S, that is the Great Lakes of America, where H stands for Huron, O for Ontario, Michigan, Erie, and Lake Superior. Also, do remember a slight bit of information extra for you. Out of all these 5 lakes, the only lake that is located entirely in the US and not shared with any other country such as Canada is Lake Michigan. Do remember this part. 5 Great Lakes, H-O-M-E-S, out of which only Great Lake Michigan is the one that is entirely in America only. Second, the difficult one, that is the Mediterranean. Now, if you look at the map, you will see that there are so many small nations in Europe, some nations in Asia, some nations in Africa, which surround the Mediterranean Sea. Now, how do we remember all of that? For this purpose, what we have done is we have made 3 different mnemonics to help you remember the nations of Africa, the nations of Asia, and then the nations of Europe that surround the Mediterranean Sea. For instance, if you need to remember just the African nations, the simple word is metal, M-E-T-A-L. Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, and Libya. These are the nations from Africa that surround the Mediterranean Sea. Similarly, from Asia, remember sea list: Cyprus, Lebanon, Israel, Syria, and Turkey. The difficult one, however, is if you try and remember the European nations, because they are a bunch of nations which actually surround the Mediterranean Sea. As you know, the Mediterranean Sea is towards the south of Europe. Now, for that, remember this sentence. That is, Benito Mussolini, I'm sure a figure that all of you would have read about in the Second World War. Benito Mussolini, fascism, again an ideology associated with Mussolini only. So, Benito Mussolini, fascism must go. As with the first episode, focus only on the capital letters. Benito Mussolini, fascism must go. Simple to remember, right? B stands for Bosnia and Herzegovina. M here stands for Malta. F stands for France, A, Albania, S for Spain, C for Croatia, I for Italy, S for Slovenia, M for Monaco, must go, M for Montenegro, and G for Greece. Simple as ever, right? So if you try and remember all these nations together, that is the African, Asian, European nations together that surround the Mediterranean, it might not be that easy for you to remember. However, if you divide them into these 3 parts, that is, if you divide them into number 1, African nations, then the Asian nation, then the European nations, it might not be that difficult as you just saw here. So I hope that you will use this trick for the Mediterranean Sea as well. The next water body is the Baltic Sea. As you can see on the screen with the map, Baltic Sea has nations such as Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Sweden, Germany that surround it. There's also Russia, by the way. Now, how do you remember these nations of the Baltic Sea? Just remember, spell, don't forget Germany, Russia. Spell, and then don't forget Germany, Russia. Spell is Sweden, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Then don't forget what? Germany and Russia. D for Denmark, F for Finland, and then Germany and Russia. Now, I know there are two reactions that are coming from you. First reaction can be, oh, this is so easy now. It is making my life so much easier. The other reaction from you can be, oh, one more thing to remember. How can I accommodate one more thing in your mind when I already have so much to remember? But do remember this, in the long run, revising these mnemonics can help you get those crucial 2 to 3 questions right in the eventual examination that you would otherwise not be able to solve. So do make some efforts towards it, because it is going to make your life much more easier in the long run. Next is the Caspian Sea, a water body which is one of those which have been appearing in the UPSC examination in the past few years. Caspian Sea is a body that is surrounded by Russia. Then we have Azerbaijan, we also have Iran, we also have Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan. Let's see, how do we remember the Caspian Sea? Tariq, T-A-R-I-K, simple. As a great Sunny Deol used to say, Tariq pe Tariq. So this is Tariq, T-A-R-I-K. That is Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Russia, Iran, and Kazakhstan. Simple. The Caspian Sea. Moving on, the next one is the Black Sea, a body that has been in so much news ever since Russia has attacked Ukraine. You have been seeing on almost every news channel, whenever they see or whenever they show you the graph of, or whenever they show you the map of Russia, map of Ukraine, whenever they show you the Mariupol area where Russian forces are attacking Ukraine right now, whenever they show you Crimea, you will always see a big water body there. That is the Black Sea. That is why it is extremely important to remember the Black Sea, its location, and the countries that surround the Black Sea. Now for the Black Sea, the easiest way to remember is T and burger. T and burger. Focus on the capital letters. T for Turkey, B for Bulgaria, U for Ukraine. Although with the way things are going, I don't know how long Ukraine will actually be bordering Mediterranean. Then R for Russia, G for Georgia, and then last R for Romania. That is the group of nations that surround the Black Sea. Make sure that you do focus on these kind of water bodies that have been in the news every single day now. Everyone who is watching the television will see on the television at least once the map of Black Sea being shown, the countries that are surrounding it. So make sure something that obvious is not left out from your preparation. Next, we have the Red Sea. That is towards the western part of India. Red Sea is a water body that is surrounded by nations such as Saudi Arabia, we have Sudan, we have Egypt, we also have Eritrea. Let's see how can we make it easier for you. For Red Sea, the easiest mnemonic is DESE. D-E-S-S-E-Y. DESE. D stands for Djibouti. Then E for Eritrea. If you have not heard of Eritrea, it's one of the most backward nations in the world. It has one of the worst human rights record in the world. In fact, one of those nations where people in every single year, thousands and thousands of people become migrants and they move towards Europe, they move towards other countries to have a better life. So Eritrea, one of the saddest places to live around the world. Then we have S for Saudi Arabia, S for Sudan, E for Egypt, and Y for Yemen. So DESE can be a pretty good, simple, short way for you to remember the nations which surround the Red Sea. Next is the Malacca Strait patrols. Now, what is the Malacca Strait patrol? I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Malacca Strait, one of the most significant trade routes for nations across the world. Now, the countries that surround the Malacca Strait have come together and decided to patrol the area together. Patrol means make sure that their forces, their navies, their coast guards are present in those areas. So they keep on having constant inspections. They keep on having constant security checks together as a team. That is called the Malacca Strait patrols. The Malacca Strait patrols are undertaken by obviously those nations which surround the Malacca Strait. It's not that difficult to remember. M-I-S-T, mist. Lot of water around in the Malacca Strait, and when there's a lot of water, the one word that you can identify this is mist. Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. These are the 4 nations in the form of mist that have come together and they patrol the Malacca Strait together. Then we have the North Sea. Now, North Sea, although it has not been in the news right now, but if you look at international media, there is a mention of the North Sea. The reason is, ever since Russia has started attacking Ukraine, there have been a lot of discussions and talks about how Europe is highly dependent on Russia for its oil and gas. And then there are some articles which will tell you the history that historically, the major source of oil and gas for European nations was actually the North Sea. And when the resources of the North Sea started to deplete, and when many of the border nations such as Denmark, etc., planned that no, we won't extract any more resources because it might lead to disruption of our ecological balance, that is when a lot of European nations shifted towards Russia for their need for oil and gas. So in that sense, North Sea is relevant right now. You might not see it directly mentioned in editorials, but if you do read international media, it has been mentioned in a few articles. So it's relevant for us also to remember which are these nations that surround the North Sea. If you can see on the map, this is Scotland, UK, we have Belgium, Netherlands, we have Denmark, Sweden, Norway, etc. Now, for the North Sea, the good way to remember this, BF, boyfriend, sends good night wishes. Must be a very good boyfriend. So BF sends good night wishes. Simple. Focus on the capital letters. That is Belgium, France, Scotland, England, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and then Germany, Netherlands. So nothing from wishes. I just wanted to complete the sentence. So I use the word wishes, but we'll focus on BF sends good night wishes or whatever you want. Now over here, there is one slight clarification I would like to give you. If you look at the map here, there are some websites which will tell you that the nation surrounding the North Sea, in those websites, you would see Sweden is not mentioned. Because if you see, actually Sweden is over here, which is connected to the Skagerrak Strait. But the data that I am giving you, or this map, particular map that I am giving you, I have taken this list from the official website of the North Sea nations. So North Sea nations inside the European Union, they have their own official website. On that website, Sweden is mentioned as a country that borders the North Sea. So if you do see certain websites where North Sea is not mentioned over here as the nation that surrounds the North Sea, don't worry, please do go ahead with Sweden. Sweden is a part of it. Now, a couple of practice questions. In fact, a couple of questions that have been asked in the prelims earlier, which can be solved from the information that we just discussed. For instance, here's a question. Consider the following countries: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Russia, Uzbekistan, Romania, and Iraq. You have to tell which of these countries touch boundaries of either the Black Sea or the Caspian Sea. Either the Black Sea or the Caspian Sea. We have discussed the tricks to remember for the Caspian Sea also. We discussed the tricks to remember the Black Sea also. So at this point of time, maybe pause the video for about 5-10 seconds. Think about the things that we just discussed. Or if you're even smarter, you can rewind the video and then check it out and you will get to know the answer. The question here is either. It's not both. Okay? It's either. So you have to see either the country should touch Black Sea or it should touch the Caspian Sea, not both. The answer here is D. 2, 3, and 5. These are the nations that either touch the Black Sea or they touch the Caspian Sea. You can go back to the video and remember this. I'll give you one more example. Which of the following European countries do not open in the Mediterranean Sea? Remember, we just discussed about the Mediterranean Sea. We discussed how to remember the African nations, the Asian nations, and the European nations that surround the Mediterranean. This option is mainly, or this question is mainly for the European nations. The option that you have is Italy, Slovenia, Hungary, and Albania. The answer here is Hungary. Hungary is actually a landlocked nation. Since it's a landlocked nation, if ever you see Hungary is in any of these options, that Hungary surrounds, or which of the water body is surrounded by Hungary, Hungary is a landlocked nation, so it is not surrounding any water body. So Hungary is a safe bet here. Now, these are the kind of questions that have been asked and will be asked in the future as well in the prelims examination. Make sure you do have at least a certain bit of foundational knowledge. As I said earlier also, mnemonics alone will not be able to help you, because remembering mnemonics is one thing, but to translate that letter What does that letter stand for? For that, you need at least certain basic knowledge about that particular question or that particular fact. So I do hope that you make sure that you revise it multiple times so that it becomes still in your mind. This is it for episode number 2. I'll see you next week, guys, with episode number 3 and more facts for you to make sure that your prelims preparation is going on track. Thank you so much for watching.